All right. Number one, what's opposite over hypotenuse? Sine. That's right, sine.
When you write that, you have to go like that fancy.
No, you can just write sine. Okay. How about number two? How long, this is a 30, 60, 90 triangle. How long is the side across from the 60? Root 3. Root 3. What's tangent? Opposite over adjacent. Opposite over adjacent. What is the abbreviation for cosecant? CSC. CSC. How about number 5? That's a 45, 45, 90 triangle. And we want to know this side right here. 1. COT is the abbreviation for cotangent. Cotangent. In this triangle, what's the cosine of theta? Why is it 4 over 5? Because isn't this the hypotenuse? And here's theta, so this would be adjacent. Adjacent over hypotenuse, 4/5. And what is the reciprocal of the sine? No, don't say hypotenuse over opposite. What function is the reciprocal of the sine? Cosecant. Cosecant, yep. Cosecant. Okay, next time we're together, that's what you're gonna do. 8 questions just like those, okay? So you know what you need to do, right guys? Take care of business. Okay. Get your calculators out. Today we're going to do some calculator work. Yeah. I don't know. All right. So here's question number 1, which is part 6A. Here it is. Now everybody pay attention. Our job is to figure out X. Now in this triangle, there is the angle. So which side is the tangent? Opposite, adjacent, or hypotenuse? What? Opposite. What about X? Hypotenuse. Now guys, I want you to stop a second. Pay attention. Is one side unknown in this triangle? One side isn't marked? Okay, so we're not going to use that side. We're going to use the sides that are marked. So we're going to use opposite and hypotenuse. Which function is that? Sine, cosine, or tangent? Sine. So, is everybody clear on why we pick sine? Opposite, hypotenuse. Now, we write an equation. Sine angle equals opposite over hypotenuse. For each of these problems, including the word problems on the next page, you're going to write an equation. And the equation is gonna be sine, cosine, or tangent, depending on which sides you have in the problem. Got it? Now, I have to solve for x. So like a regular equation, I'm gonna multiply the x over here. I can't solve when it's in a denominator, ever, any equation. So I'm gonna bring the x over here. And now I'm gonna divide by sine 28. And that is gonna give me the answer to the question. Now, caution, that 28 is a degree. So you need to make sure you go to mode and your calculator needs to be in degrees. You will not get the right answer, folks, if you're not in the right mode. Pay attention. So 10 divided by sine 28. I got my hypotenuse to be 21.30. Now in a minute, we're gonna do some word problems. We'll have to put a unit on that, like feet or something. But right now, we're just practicing typing this in on our calculator. Okay, easy enough. Let's look at the next one. All right, so you're gonna write an equation. It's gonna be sine, cosine, or tangent. In order to figure that out, figure out which side you've got. So here's your angle, 13 degrees. Which side is this? Adjacent. Which side is this? Which function am I going to use? So cosine angle, the angle always gets hooked to the sine, cosine, or tangent. So cosine angle equals adjacent over hypotenuse. So I'm going to solve that by timesing both sides by x, and then dividing. So what are we going to type into our calculator? 4 divided by cosine 13. Oops. And I got 4.11. If I round off to the 100th. Without my help, come up with an equation for the next problem. So look at the figure. Here's your angle. Anybody have a thought on sine, cosine, or tangent? Because this is opposite and this is adjacent. So tan 52, always make sure your angle is with the tangent. Opposite over adjacent. All we have to do this time is times by 5. Would you agree with that? 5 tan 52. I got 6.4 of them. Everybody keeping up okay? Addie?
How do you know if the X or the number is on the top?
Opposite over adjacent. So you gotta figure out which side is which based on where your angle is. So if my angle's here, this is the opposite side, right? Yeah. So label your sides and then set it up that way. Okay, D. So, what I just said to Addie, hopefully y'all were listening. Here's your angle. Which side's this? Adjacent. Which side's this? Hypotenuse. Which function am I going to use? Cosine. So cosine 17. You want to see me wig out? Put the 10 with the cosine. No, never, ever, ever. What goes with your sine, cosine, and tangent? The angle. The angle. So cosine 17 equals x over 10 times by 10. So regular equation, you're trying to get x by itself. And what do we get? 9.56. Let's do that. We'll follow whatever directions there are. Here's my angle. Which side is this? Gosh, is this another cosine? Cosine 63 equals 5 over x. Gotta get rid of that denominator. And then you gotta divide. .01. Everybody good? All right, now our word problems. Draw a picture, write an equation, round to the nearest hundredth. So, these problems are going to be exactly like the ones we just did, except you have to draw your own picture. Okay? This is a real world. This is what trigonometry is used for. So let's read the problem and see if we can figure this out. A squirrel is sitting in the top of a tree that is 52 feet tall. So here's the tree, here's the squirrel, and he's up there 52 feet. Would everybody agree with that? He's looking at a nut on the ground. His angle of depression is 23 degrees. Now, I can't remember if we talked about this at the beginning of the year or not, did we? Angles of depression, elevation. All the beady little eyes are focused right up here on me. I'm going to tell you something really, really important. Well, everything I say is important, but this is going to be critical to your success. An angle of elevation or an angle of depression. It doesn't matter which it is. Some problems are going to say the squirrel's looking down at the nut, that's an angle of depression. Some are going to say the worm is looking up at the bird, that's an angle of elevation. It doesn't matter. The angle of elevation and depression always goes right here. Always. Don't put an angle of elevation or an angle of depression anywhere else. Every angle of elevation or depression is going right here. Now I'm going to take a minute to explain that to you. This particular problem says his angle of depression is 23 degrees. If I am the squirrel and I look straight ahead, my angle of depression is the angle that my head tilts through to look down at the nut. So this would technically be the angle of depression. But we learn in geometry that parallel lines cut by a transversal, alternate interior angles are congruent. Don't put it up here, because that's not even in my triangle. And for Pete's sake, don't put it here, because that would be wrong. That's just plain wrong. Your angle of depression or elevation is always going to be drawn right there. And how big is it? 23 degrees. Find the distance from the nut to the base of the tree. So we have to put an X into our picture. The X is either going to go here or here. Which do you think it is? Bottom. Guys, there's the nut. There's the base of the tree. On the distance from the nut to the base of the tree. What's this distance? This is the distance from the nut to the squirrel. Could we ask that question? Sure. We didn't. There it is. There's your picture. Sine, cosine, or tangent. What is it? Tangent. This is opposite. This is adjacent. So tan 23 equals 52 over x. What do? Times the x, bring the x over. And then divide by tan 23. And that's going to be my answer. 52 divided by tan 23. Did you get 122.50 feet? Remember, word problems get units. You guys okay with that? Easy enough. All right, let's look at the next one. A seagull on the top of a lighthouse. Here's my lighthouse. Here's my seagull. And he spots a fish in the water below. The goal is 87 feet above sea level. Where's that going to go? Isn't that right here? Isn't that 87 feet up in the air? The goal is 230 feet from the fish.
The hypotenuse.
Hypotenuse. Find the angle of depression. All right. What sides do I have? Opposite and hypotenuse. So what function do I need? Sine. And what always goes with the sine? The angle. I called it x. You could call it theta if you want. Sine equals 87 over 230. Oh man, we've not done this before.
This is opposite, this would be adjacent. This is just the angle.
Our job is to find an angle. Would you agree? And when we find an angle, guys, we need a special button on our calculator. find the button on your calculator that looks like this. It is second sign. It is above your sign key. Everybody see it? When you need an angle, you're gonna do second sine, second cosine, second tangent, if you're finding an angle. I haven't done that before because I knew my angle. If I'm finding an angle, I have to do second. Alright, so here I go. Second sine, 87 divided by 230. Did you get 22.23 degrees? The unit on that would be degrees. It's an angle. So for all these problems, we're either going to use our regular sign button or our second sign button. How do I know what to use? If I'm looking for an angle, then I gotta do this. If X is the angle, then I gotta do this. Alright, C. How far is an airplane from the airport? So here's the airport, here's the airplane, it's coming in for a landing. How far is an airplane from the airport if he is currently 5,000 feet above the ground? Where does that go? Here, right? And the angle of depression is 17 degrees. Where's the X go? How far is the plane from the port? Hypotenuse. Are we gonna need second sign this time? Nope. Regulars, one of them. You want sine, cosine, or tangent? Sine. Sine 17 equals opposite over hypotenuse. So x sine 17 equals 5,000. And 5,000 divided by sine 17. It's probably going to be a big number. 17,101.52, was it feet? Feet. Remember, all of our word problems need units. If it's an angle, it's degrees. If it's a length, it's something else. All right. I want you to try D all by yourself. I want you to try to draw a picture, write an equation, and solve it. picture you're pretty happy with? Megan, wanna come up, put it on the board? Your picture? And label all the parts. Oh, she's fancy. You don't need to put stripes and stars on your flag, okay? This is going a little above and beyond. All right, let's take a look at it. See what we think. Problem said, thank you, Megan. Problem said, find the height of a flagpole. Does she have X in the right spot?
Yeah.
That's her flagpole. The shadow is 13 feet long. Does she have that in the right spot?
Yeah.
She totally does. Because where are shadows? On the ground. On the ground. And the angle of elevation is 59 degrees. Is that in the right spot?
Yep.
Yep. So now she needs an equation. So she looks at the setup here. She's gonna pick sine, cosine, or tangent. Cosine? Tangent? Okay, it can't be sine or cosine. Because sine and cosine need the hypotenuse. And we don't have the hypotenuse. So it's gotta be tangent. Does everybody get that? So tan 59 equals x over 13, opposite over adjacent. That's times by 13. And your answer should be 21.64. Anybody have a question about that? One more. We got a man. Standing out here, looking at the top of the building. The building is 48 feet tall. Where's that go? Right here, right? It's the building. He is standing 100 feet from the building. On the ground. This is 100, right here. That's 100. Our job is to find the angle. Sine, cosine, or tangent? Tangent. So tan x equals opposite over adjacent. This is one of the tricky ones. How do we find an angle? We don't just type tangent, we have to type second tangent. 48 over 100. 25.64 degrees. All good, my friends? Guess what? You can finally do some homework now. So 4.2 will be due on Friday, along with your quiz. So Friday's the day. Have a quiz and some homework to do. Now we're gonna go ahead and plow ahead in the 4.3.
I'm looking for it.
our study of trigonometry, okay? So let's look at what's happening in this problem. Okay, so there's a point out here, -3, -4. Here's the origin, -3, -4. And drawn an angle through it. And that angle is theta. Now, for the first time, our angle is not in quadrant 1. This time our angle is in quadrant 3. Now, that doesn't change too many of the fundamentals, doesn't change any fundamentals. But you have to be aware that when you're in quadrant 3, some things are negative. Okay? So we're gonna find all of our functions, just like we did the other day, except now we're doing it with an angle in quadrant 3. Okay, so here's what I want you to do. We need a triangle. And when we draw our triangle, I want you to put your pencil right there on that point. You can use my picture. Put your pencil right there and go straight up. Remember how the other day I was just kind of fanatical about us making sure our triangles were drawn like this? Well, that triangle can be drawn in every quadrant. And when you draw a triangle in trigonometry, it has to be one of these. We call that the butterfly bow tie. You're either gonna draw it in quadrant 1 like this, that's the one we've been drawing. I happen to be in quadrant 3, so I've drawn this one. Don't draw them any other way. When you make your triangle, go up or down to the x-axis. Now, here's the good news. They told me what this point was. Here's the origin. This is the point -3, -4. Left 3, down 4. That's how you get to that point. Here's your angle right here at the origin. So which side is this? Opposite. And this one is adjacent. And here's my hypotenuse, but I don't know what it is. That's okay. How do I find it? Pythagorean theorem. Now remember, when you square, everything becomes positive. So let's not worry about the negatives. -3 squared is 9. -4 squared is 16. And those are going to add up to my hypotenuse. What's 9 and 16? 25. So what's C? 5. Now, lots to remember, but it's easy. Hypotenuse is always positive. So the horizontal can be negative and the vertical can be negative, depending on which quadrant you're in. But these guys are always going to be positive. Okay, great. What's the sign? Sign is opposite over hypotenuse, so -4/5. Remember how we got negatives yesterday in our calculator? And you maybe were wondering, how does that happen? It happens when you're in a quadrant other than quadrant 1. The sign, S-I-G-N, of your trig functions depends on which quadrant you're in. Everything was positive yesterday because we were always in quadrant 1. But now we're gonna get negatives, all right? What's my cosine?
Negative 4/5.
Negative 3/5. What's my tangent? So actually, the tangent works out to be positive, doesn't it? Because isn't it a negative over a negative? And then these are still the flips. So negative 5/4, negative 5/3, and 3/4. Now, the picture looks weird, I get it, but you did nothing there that you didn't do the other day. It's exactly the same problem. All right, let's look at the next one. This time, I'm in quadrant 4. And I'm just gonna go ahead and draw my triangle. I'm not gonna draw all the other extra stuff. I'm in quadrant 4, so my butterfly bow tie triangle in quadrant 4. What is my X? What's my horizontal? 1. What's my vertical? -2. Write 1 down 2. So let's do our Pythagorean theorem. Go ahead. Find your hypotenuse. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. What'd you come up with? Square root of 5. Perfect. Did everybody get square root of 5? 1 squared plus 2 squared equals C squared. Remember, I don't need to worry about the negative because I'm squaring. Nothing's negative in the Pythagorean theorem. Okay, here we go. Remember, your angle is always the one at the origin. So isn't this adjacent and opposite? So what's my sign? Opposite over hypotenuse. -2 root 5 over 5. What's my cosine? 1 over root 5, root 5 over 5. And what's my tangent? -2 over 1, or just -2? Cosecant root 5 over -2. Secant root 5 over 1. And cotangent -1. Now, I want you to look at your orange sheet one more time. You have been doing sine as opposite over hypotenuse, and that's fine. But there's another definition for sine. What is that other definition? Y over R. I want you to look at something, kids. In this problem, this was the point 1, -2. In other words, X was 1 and Y was -2. If we envision a giant circle, then this hypotenuse is the radius of the circle. So when it says that sine is y over r, is that how it worked out? Did it come out to be y over r, -2 over root 5? Yes. Now, why do we have those definitions? Because not every triangle in the whole wide world is a right triangle. And so we can't always use SOHCAHTOA. Because if it isn't right, it won't have a hypotenuse. You see what I'm saying? So these are called the circular definitions. X over R, Y over R, Y over X. Those are the circular definitions. And you need to be aware of those too. All right. All right, for letter C, go ahead. Come on, we gotta get through these, guys. Get your head up, Evan. Gotta get through these. For this problem, go ahead and draw your triangle. Now, I don't care, you can go ahead and use mine, that's fine. But understand that this problem is in quadrant 2. And so the triangle you draw has to look like that shaded one right there. That's the quadrant 2 butterfly bow tie triangle. And the point is -1, 3, which means x is -1 and y is 3. Remember, x is sideways, y is up and down. So -1, +3. Find your hypotenuse. Is it what? I heard somebody say the square root of 10. Is that right? 3 squared plus 1 squared. So now you ought to be filling in everything. Go ahead, you got your picture drawn. You have adjacent, angles here. You have adjacent, you have opposite, you have hypotenuse. You have X and Y and R. Alright, this is what I got. Anybody have an issue? I'm due for a stint today, so look at it carefully, make sure it's all okay. Alright? Okay, one more, guys. One more. What's the good news about this last problem? It's in quadrant 1, which means we do not need to worry about any negatives. In quadrant 1, everything is positive. Go ahead. See if you can fill it in. pay attention to your point. X is 4 and Y is 5. X is sideways. Y is vertical. Noah, what's the first thing you were thinking about?
Well, the angle of like, what the degree is of the angle. So we have to figure that out.
No, you don't need the angle. Does the question say anything about finding the angle? No, we need to find the sine, cosine, and tangent. What piece of information am I missing, Noah?
The hypotenuse.
Exactly. So what's gonna be my first thing?
Find the
I'm gonna
hypotenuse.
find the hypotenuse. Alright, so find the hypotenuse, and how do we do that?
So, don't we have to find the angle to find the hypotenuse? No.
No,
No.
no, we don't need the angle. We could find that angle. We would need a calculator to do that, but it's irrelevant in this problem. We don't need it in this problem. Somebody help him out. How do you find the hypotenuse? A squared plus B squared equals C squared. And Noah and others that are struggling with this, write that down.
Okay.
And then plug in, A is 4, B is 5, and C is my hypotenuse, which is what I don't know. So 16 plus 25. It looks like our hypotenuse is the square root of 41. You can't do the problem without the hypotenuse. Okay? 4 is adjacent, this is an angle. 5 is opposite. Here we go. Sine is 5 over root 41. Cosine is 4 over root 41. I know I haven't simplified yet. And tangent is 5/4. So 5 root 41 over 41. 4 root 41 over 41. And now I flip them. How's that look to everybody? Golden?
Excellent way.
Alright. We'll pick up here next time. After we take our quiz and after you've turned in your homework.